There's a lot going on in the world, no matter where you look. The U.S. rejecting Maduro's claim of victory in those Venezuela elections. In the Mideast, we got tensions, of course. They continue to rise and potentially escalate. In Europe, the Russian-Ukraine war is still ongoing, and it's all taking place at the same time as this election year here in America that is the talk of the town. Joining us right now to give us some perspective and give us some talk of the town, Richard Haass, Counsel on Foreign Relations, President Emeritus, and Centerview Partners, Senior Counselor. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Andrew.
Which one do you want to take first? And relate it back, though, to the election, because I'm actually very curious how you think the election may or may not impact all of these things, and if it is actually impacting these things.
The interesting thing is foreign policy won't have much to do with the outcome of our elections. I don't think an awful lot of Americans are going to vote on the basis of foreign policy views. But whatever happens here will have an enormous impact.
But flip it around. Do you think that any of these things, whether there's going to be an escalation in the Middle East, how you think Putin is thinking about Ukraine, how you think what's going on, do you think any of that is a function of, well, the U.S. is they're focused over here, we're going to do this over here?
Over the next, 90 or so days, I don't think, two of the three stories you mentioned, Ukraine is going to have much, if any, impact. It's going to look pretty familiar. Venezuela, unfortunately, will look pretty familiar. The one story that could hurt things here or affect things here would be the Middle East. And I think if bad things were to happen there, that would probably have a negative impact for Kamala Harris simply because she represents the administration.
What is your sense of what's going to happen in the Middle East right now? Because there is this sort of rising sense that there's going to be an escalation. We thought, there were reports.
Like a sword of Damocles.
There were reports on Sunday
hanging over.
On Monday there was going to be an attack somewhere, either on Israel or on Israeli, facilities in other countries. There was
like a three-front
hasn't happened yet.
Even. I think it's still likely. This was a real humiliation for the Iranian authorities. That's the stories that keep coming out. This was not an Israeli missile strike or aircraft strike. This was an inside job. They obviously recruited people in Iran, so I think they are really humiliated, again, is the word. I think they want to do something. On the other hand, they've been getting lots of pushback, including from, funnily enough, probably the Russians and the Chinese. We don't want to see a major crisis right there. And the real issue is then, where would they be? So imagine, quote unquote, they retaliate.
Yep.
Well, where does that leave them? How do they then avoid Israel's retaliation against the retaliation? So I get the sense that the Iranians are still measuring what to do.
And what kind of reaction, if in fact there is some kind of attack, what does the United States do?
Well, right now, again, a lot depends upon what are the consequences to the attack.
Right.
Last time in April, if you recall, when the Iranians sent, 300 drones and missiles, the United States urged the Israelis, quote unquote, to take the win, respond in a very modest way. I think a lot depends on what the Iranians do and what, if any, casualties it calls. But the basic U.S. pressure is going to be to tamp things down. We don't want to have a big exchange.
It would get complicated. We're hearing, arms embargo, people accusing Kamala Harris of saying that there had been. This would be different than Gaza. This would be we'd have to put all of our resources to back Israel if this was against Iran.
100%. Yeah. Gaza was a discretionary effort by increasingly by the Israelis, and they were using military force in a way that was causing enormous.
So I thought you just said everything's going to get tamped down. They're not going to do. We're not going to do something.
No, but Israel's going to, if the Iranians hit Israel, I think the United States are going to say, yeah, well, we're going to talk to you about what it is you do. Is this an opportunity for Israel to go after the Iranian nuclear program? Does Israel escalate? Or do they basically, again, do they simply react in a modest way, which is what they did last time? Right. Again, it so much depends upon what the Iranians do and what, if any, effect it has.
What do you think the current state of Bibi Netanyahu's support is inside Israel? Do you think he's going to still be in that role?
Yes.
In how long? 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years? What's
elections aren't scheduled for another couple of years. He's got a pretty comfortable, 4-seat or so majority in the Israeli Knesset in the parliament. But there's two things. One, at the moment, he's strong. And he's got 5 fronts he's dealing with. Think about it. He's got the Houthis, in Yemen. They've had exchanges. You've got Iran. You've got Hezbollah. You've got Hamas. And you got the situation in the West Bank. Things are percolating in 5 different fronts and venues. My hunch is he stays there for a while. And let me make a bigger argument. If for some reason Bibi Netanyahu were to be forced out, have a physical problem, the idea that Israel then is going to go back to being the old liberal Israel or Shimon Peres, that Israel's gone. So Bibi Netanyahu now is as much symptom as he is cause of Israel's political evolution.
Will the 2028 election, will there be discussions about Russia, Ukraine in 2020? The reason I ask, so Ukraine now attacking an area of Russia, total surprise, yeah. And so now they got to send troops. So it's just going on and on and on. If, let's say, Trump were to win, would there be some kind of, you take this, you keep this, would some kind of art of the deal he would try to do to end this? Or does it go on forever?
It could go on for a long time at a low level. What I'm hoping is that if U.S. support for Ukraine militarily is pretty strong, if Putin comes away with the sense that U.S. support is not going away, that Ukraine has the ability and the permission from the U.S. to do the kinds of things they did yesterday, that essentially time is not his friend. And then I think the chances of some type of a ceasefire, an interim ceasefire in place, begins to grow. Neither side has to give up its long-term claims. Putin can keep his fever dreams that Ukraine essentially is part of Russia. Yeah. Ukraine can keep its dreams that it wants to get all of its land back, going back to 1991. But could you have some Korea-style armistice, some Cyprus-style ceasefire? Absolutely. I think that's possible. But the prerequisite of that is U.S. support for Ukraine has to be certain.
Richard Haass, it's always nice to see you, sir.
Good to be here.
Are you available?
Available?
Yeah, to negotiate something over there?
Oh, I'd love to. I mean,
would you work for either administration?
Negotiation on that is something that I think the United States has to push, and I do think there.
Would you work for either administration?
On something narrow, like something specific like that? Absolutely. That's public service.